of business, finance, and the economy. I'm Faith Dafa Joseph, your host. As always, here are some headlines we will be looking at today. The Minister of Finance has said that there are no plans to implement the 5% fuel tax anytime soon. Remember, that has been making headlines. And also, New Bank has finally suspended its 2-day strike because the Dangote Group agreed to unionize. I'll give you the details of that in the show. Also, the federal government is restricting tax credit for NNPCL below 20 billion naira to indigenous firms. So what exactly does that mean? We get to talk about that during the show as well. And then Federal Inland Revenue Service is tapping the EFCC to enforce tax compliance. The new tax laws commence next year. So what does that mean for you? And finally, Nigeria has slipped in global mobility rankings. We'll talk about what that is exactly. And later on, I will be speaking to my guest on the recently concluded Intra-Africa trade fair that took place in Algeria and concluded yesterday, and what it means for Africa and Nigerian economy. But let's start with the first headline. So the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Adun, he explained that the 5% tax, policy will not be kicking off immediately. He said that although the policy is included in the new tax administration set to take effect on January 1, 2026, its implementation will not proceed without following all formal processes involved. I'm going to just quote him. He says, before any such can come into effect, it requires a commencement order from the Honorable Minister of Finance, and this indeed must be published in the Gazette. So it is not automatic that we will wake up on January 1 and there will be a new tax. And he also clarified that the surcharge is a long-standing provision that was originally introduced in 2007 under the Federal Road Maintenance Agency FIRMA Act. And it is not a new tax introduced by the President Bola Tinubu's administration. What is very, very interesting is that he went on to say that the surcharge in itself was included in the 2025 Act because they wanted to consolidate and harmonize existing laws for greater clarity and easier compliance. So I'm thinking, if you're making an entirely new law, why did you have to bring this back? You could have just to let this go, right? Knowing that Nigerians are complaining about the hardship that they're facing with the removal of subsidy and the devaluing of the currency. So why did this have to be included in the new tax? Why do Nigerians have to deal with that? But now he's saying, we're not going to effect this immediately. So when will it be effected? Well, I guess he would let us know when the time is right. He says that there's a whole formal process that is involved. And as of today, no order has been issued, none has been prepared, and there's no immediate plan to implement any surcharge. So fingers crossed. Now, let's talk about New Bank and Dangote, right? So, according to a new memorandum of understanding that has been signed at a meeting that was convened by the Minister for Labour and, of course, the different parties, but both parties have agreed that unionization is a right under extant labour laws, and employees of Dangote Refinery and Petrochemicals who wish to unionize would be allowed to do so. The MOU further stated that the process of unionization would begin immediately and be completed within 2 weeks. Now, arising from the strike notice, the different unions have said that no worker or employee of Dangote Refinery and Petrochemicals will be victimized. And New Bank says that it's suspending its strike with immediate effect, but both parties are expected to report back to the Minister of Labour within a week after the conclusion of the exercise. Let's talk about this very briefly, right? So you had New Bank going on strike because the new drivers that were going to be employed by the Dangote refinery for the over 4,000 CNG trucks that will transport Dangote petroleum products. They wanted to unionize, and the Dangote refinery was like, no, you cannot do that. One of the things that Dangote has been accused, or the firm, is that they're very anti-union, right? So now you had New Bank downing tools and saying that your people must be allowed to unionize. And so when they decided to go on this strike, of course, because the federal government is stepping, the Minister of Labour stepped in, brought everybody together. In fact, they had walked out first, and then they finally came together and they agreed that they were going to be able to make this work. So it's very interesting that you saw the Dangote company actually capitulate, to this particular demand. We'll see how it plays out. They have 2 weeks to unionize, so Fingers crossed. All right, let me talk about the third headline very quickly. So the federal government is directing that all NNPCL tax credit road contracts below 20 billion naira be reserved exclusively for indigenous contractors, barring expatriate firms from such projects. Basically, this policy that was introduced by the Ministry of Works under this Nigeria First initiative, according to the minister, is aimed at strengthening local participation in infrastructure delivery. And so he's saying that any projects below the contract sum of 20 billion naira would not be given to expatriate firms. And he said that this is part of measures to promote the Nigeria First policy of the federal government of Nigeria. All right, let's talk about this very quickly. We talked about the tax laws that are coming into effect come January 1, 2026. Anyway, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, that also will be renamed to the NRS after this. And I said that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission is key in its drive to enforce voluntary tax compliance. How is it voluntary tax compliance when you need the EFCC to drive and enforce it? Anyway, according to this statement from the service, on Tuesday, the FIRS Executive Chairman, Dr. Zach Adeji, said this because there was a courtesy visit to the EFCC quarters in Abuja. So this newly signed tax act, which will go into effect in January, according to the FIRS, like I said, it will transform the FIRS into the Nigerian Revenue Service. And during the visit, the two agencies renewed the commitment to collaborate more in order to strengthen Nigeria's tax compliance framework and safeguard public revenue. One of the things to also note, during this entire speech by by Dr. Zach, was that he actually mentioned that, people start to see their tax working, then you would not have to enforce compliance. So it's just some sort of contradictory statements that you're telling us that you're going to have the EFCC enforce this. But, when people say their tax working, you wouldn't have to force them. Anyway. Let's talk about this last headline very, very quickly. Nigeria continues to struggle within Africa's competitiveness landscape, and it is ranked 30th on the continent in the 2025 Africa reports. This regional position is also highlighting Nigeria's inability to keep pace with smaller but more agile African economies that are making steady progress in mobility and perception. On a global scale, Nigeria slipped one place to 135th out of 188 countries, down from 134 in 2024. That is certainly not good. Now, according to findings from CS Global Partners' recent Africa report, these persistent obstacles are fueling a growing trend among wealthy Nigerians and investors who are increasingly seeking second citizenship abroad, also showing the problems that we have, whether it is with ease of doing business or other thing around the economy. We definitely need to work on that. We'll go for a very quick break, and when we return, we'll talk about the ITF 2025. That's the Intra-African 2025 that took place in Algiers. And yes, I do have a special who was a delegate joining me for that conversation. Stick around. Stay with Business Lens on Rapid TV. All right, welcome back to the Business Lens here on Rapid TV. So the IATF 2025, which is Africa's premier trade and investment platform, took place. That's the fourth Intra-African Trade Fair, and it happened in Algiers, in Algeria, from September 4 to September 10. It is always organized by the Afro-Exim Bank in collaboration with the African Union Commission and, of course, the AFCFTA Secretariat. Now, it is the continent's leading marketplace for businesses, investors, and entrepreneurs, which unlocked access to a $3.5 trillion market of 1.4 billion people. So it had about 35,000 plus delegates, and it explored opportunities from 75 plus exhibiting countries and witnessed over 44 billion in trade and investment deals across manufacturing, ICT, energy, finance, health, and creative industries. The event ended yesterday, the 10th, with Nigeria having the largest representation. And in fact, Nigeria didn't just have the largest representation. Nigeria also received special recognition at the event, winning the award for Best Stand for Doing Business and Networking. All right, now I'm going to be joined by Dr. Ugochukwu Williams, who was a delegate at the trade fair. Great to have you on the show this morning. All right, good to have you on the show. Let's talk about this particular trade fair and all of the things that happened there. Now, this is supposed to be a platform that will help with trade in Africa, and this was the fourth edition. So, let's give you an overview of how the event was in itself, and of course, Nigeria's presence there because Nigeria is heavily represented.
Yeah, so thank you, Rapid TV, for using this opportunity to showcase Nigeria and also Africa, and for inviting me to talk about our experience at the AIPF 2025. Yeah, it was a very big event, very huge at one. Nigeria played key role as always, as the giant of Africa. And the participation was huge from Nigerian counterpart, from Nigerian business and enterprises, so many of them, and so many companies from Nigeria played role in sponsorship, like Dangote and so many other big companies from Nigeria. As it was a great avenue for all Africans. This year event was so huge that every participant had a fair share of the opportunities that abound within the event. It wasn't just a usual trade fair, but it's an opportunity for you to negotiate and have opportunity, especially for the Algerian companies who has a lot to offer to Africa too, and other countries in Africa who have so many businesses that we can network to within across the African continent. Nigeria, as a huge business hub for Africa, has a lot too to offer for the country, for the continent, and the advantage was taken from the big companies to the SMEs.
All right, then. Thank you very much, Dr. Ugochukwu Williams. Let's talk about the fact that during this particular trade fair, you have mentioned Nigeria had a great representation, but not just that. Nigeria has been selected to host the IETF for 2027. What does that mean for Nigeria, especially, and of course, Lagos, which will be like the host city?
Yes, for us Nigerians, it's a very big is a very good one for Nigeria, and it is a platform that will give opportunity for every business in Nigeria to come showcase what they have, and which I know Nigeria has a lot of business opportunities to showcase for the IETF 2027. I want to congratulate the good people of Nigeria, the presidents, the citizens of Nigeria for that opportunity to host the IETF 2027. It's going to create a lot of opportunity for Nigerians. And Nigeria have not hosted it before, even though Nigeria has, a citizen of Nigeria has been the president of Afrexim Bank for the last 10 years, I think, thereabout. So it's it is going to be an avenue for all Nigerian businesses to showcase what they have and also get counterparts who can take from Nigerian businesses. For instance, in Algeria, where we are today, we have engaged with a lot of Algerian companies. Algerian companies had, in fact, took 50% or 40% of showcasing their company, their opportunities in Algeria, which cut across both IT, tech, production line, agriculture, and oil and gas, construction, fabrication, a lot. So for Nigeria in 2027, it's going to create an avenue for Nigerians to showcase all we have in our agricultural sector, in the mining sector. Right now, you see Nigeria is producing vehicles. There are a lot of things that are all Nigerian made. It's the opportunity for Nigeria to showcase all the Nigerian made products, both in the defense and in every sector. for other African countries, instead of buying from China, buying from Europe or America, they can look inward, get all those opportunities in Nigeria. Not only that, also including services and consultancy and other services that aid trade, and also investment like finance and all that. So many other, they can take advantage of that, which Nigeria has a huge potential to offer to Africa.
Absolutely, I agree with you. But you were talking about, looking within. One of the problems that we have had in Africa is that we do not trade as much with each other, that's African countries, as we should. I mean, if you actually look at Africa's global trade, you can see that trading within Africa with African countries constitutes a very small portion, right? But then we have the AFCFTA, which is the secretariat that is also part of the organization for this, right? Now, that is supposed to help with the exchange and trade of goods and services, creating a single market within Africa. If this is actually achieved, what you would see is that we will be probably the largest single market. I mean, Europe is just about 27 countries. So if we had it in Africa, you'll have about 54 countries participating in this. But we have not been able to harness and actually, benefit from the impacts of the AFCFTA. Do you think that these platforms like this trade fair can help us harness that potential and actually increase trade within the African continent?
Absolutely, very, very correct. Platforms like this have not been introduced in the past. Africa is a developing continent, and the wealth of the world is domiciled in Africa. So, and if Africa can achieve a single trade opportunity or currency or single trade arrangement like the AFTA, it will create a very good opportunity for Africa. The events like this is what is needed in Africa. I must tell you that since the conference, IFTA conference started, it created a lot of enabling environment for other African trade, Africans to trade within Africa. It's not a one-day thing. Europe did not achieve it within 10, 20 years. And I know gradually we are going to achieve that. One of the challenges Africa have always had is payment systems for within the African trade, and also logistics, moving goods from one country to another without having a lot of bottleneck here and there at the borders, and also trying to make a payment from, for instance, from Nigeria to Algeria, go into your bank in Nigeria, make a payment, and your business partner in Algeria receive the payment, or you go into a bank in Ghana and you make your payment, somebody in Liberia or somebody in Ethiopia receive payment, or Egypt. So that has been a very big challenge. And I think this year, IATF, a platform was launched by the Afrexim Bank, which has to be one payment platform that can give you opportunity to make payment for SMEs from all parts of Africa, especially for the banks that are signed up for it, which I know in Nigeria, a lot of Nigerian banks have signed. You know, Nigerians are always in forefront for this. Nigerian Bank, Access Bank, Zenith Bank, Fidelity, GTB, so many of them have signed it. For us, our business people who are trading across Africa, we are proud of that because that gives us enabling environment to do payments. In terms of that, I was speaking with one of our SME from Nigeria. He's into fashion. He sells a lot within Africa from different African countries. But one of his challenges has been how to make payment and how to deliver those goods to those African countries. Most time he's a fashion designer in Abuja, but he finds it difficult sending a goods by DHL. For instance, he says it's easier for him to send to London and America than to send to South Africa or Ethiopia or send to Congo. So you see that these are the challenges that Africa face. And this bottle that goes down to a lot of young people that you see that are young SMEs and entrepreneurs who are trying to grow the African economy. These are challenges. So Afrexim Bank has done well by introducing that the pass which gives you opportunity to make that payment. And also, and I think there is another platform that Afrexim Bank just launched, ATC something, that's also going to create for haulages and logistics for within the Africa. So you can see that platforms like this are very great and good for the growth of trade within Africa. And I know the next 5 to 10 years from now, a lot of trade within the African will be more easier than what we have been experiencing in the past. And it will be difficult for Africans to even buy many of their goods from Asia or America or Europe. So that gives opportunity for many of those Asian giants companies and Europe and America to come down to Africa to establish their factories and so on. So so it is a very, very good and important. Like I said, the PASS is very, very PASS is a very good platform that Afrexim Bank has introduced.
Let me talk about, some challenges that you mentioned. That's talking about logistics in Africa. Even to travel by air in Africa, you find out that it is very expensive, right?
Very, very
and then
expensive.
when you're moving your goods and services, there's a lot of bottlenecks. Infrastructure is a big problem as well, because even countries that you can link to via road, there's no rail infrastructure. The AFCFTA was supposed to help in harnessing, trade benefits. But there's also the political will of African leaders to invest in infrastructure. Isn't that another crucial part that can aid in trade? There's a political will conversation here too.
Very, very important. That, in fact, the political will is a key part of this African trade opportunity, unlocking the African trade opportunity in the Africa. The governments of Africa, the politicians, the leaders, they have critical role to play in achieving this. For instance, imagine if we have a rail from Kano to Algeria, because people do roads from. I flew in with a Nigerian who is into date production, syrup production. He goes by road before now to all the way to Algeria, and he goes two days to get to Algeria, because Algeria has very good dates for syrup production. So imagine if we have a rail transport, if the government of that on that line, let's say Nigerian government, the Mali, the I think Burkina Faso and Algeria have a train line that runs all that way. It can be financed. It can be financed by a joint partnership arrangement by the countries. You can see that the trade and movement of goods and services will be more easier. So the government has key role to play, like the African Trade Agreement program, which many countries have not signed up yet. And that is also, for instance, I was trying to move things from Nigeria to Monrovia, Liberia, because I have a project in Liberia. And I find it difficult to move things from Nigeria to Liberia. I went to the African Trade Agreement Office in Abuja, and I found that they are also handicapped because the policy is there, but the government the political will is not there to implement those policies. So it is a wake-up call to our presidents, the president of the African continent, to, during the AU meetings, sign up for projects, fund projects that can aid movement of goods and services within Africa. Let me also share with another experience with you. You were talking about flying. Sometimes you need to fly to Africa. It's very costly to fly within Africa. Very, very costly. So many people who are attending this AFTA conference are flying. People that are going to Botswana have to fly to Istanbul before they get back to Zambia.
Wow.
Somebody is flying to Dubai before you get back to Botswana. So you can imagine flying to other continent before you come back to your own continent. So these are the things that when you look at it, for instance, I have a business to do in Botswana right now. So for me to fly from Nigeria, or for me to fly from Algeria, I have to fly to Dubai. and now fly back to Africa. And that's a huge money. You lose money, you lose time, and all these are economic waste to African continent. So the African leaders need to be more proactive. They need to be more visionary. They need to look. They need to remove policies in terms of growth and development for Africa. When you look at if you can look at these policies and put it in place, if all African leaders can have one vision for Africa, I don't think we should be going to every other continent to source for anything, because 80% or 70% of the raw materials used in producing everything you see all over the world, in Asia, in America, in Europe, they are all coming from Africa. So if African leaders join forces together and say, we want these factories to be done here, you have the raw materials in Africa, so why can't you do it? So you can actually, it's a political will, the government will. So we are praying that we'll have more visionary leaders in Africa who will understand, who will go beyond policy making and go into implementation of policies, not just making policies.
I agree with you. They're talking about the fact that, I mean, one of the statements that you made is very, very key, talking about moving away from politics and actually focusing on trade and economy so that we can move the African continent to where it's supposed to be. Let's talk about, costs. And I'm not just talking about the logistics costs. Let's talk about things such as tariffs, right? And administrative barriers that different countries will require if you want to do business, even within the African continent. Is that a problem as well? Tariffs and maybe custom duties. Are those issues that need to be addressed as well?
Yes, the issues of tariffs, these are issues that need to be addressed. If you're going by road from Nigeria to Lome to Accra, and Accra to Ivory Coast, Monrovia to Guinea, Conakry, and also all those routes, and also the same thing in the East Africa and South Africa, you see different tariffs. So many of them are so high that you don't want to trade within Africa. So the tariffs differs in those countries. And that's the essence of the African Trade Agreement, so that you can have a modified and friendly tariffs within the countries. It's not that you're going to abolish tariff totally, because countries need to generate revenue, but you can actually give discounts, tariffs, and waivers to be able to achieve a better trade within Africa. So it's also boiled down on the leaders and the governments of each of these countries, which ECOWAS, AU need to play a key role in having, if possible, a single tariff system monitored or managed by ECOWAS or AU.
Very, very key, what you're saying, because even within the West African, space, which is where ECOWAS plays a role, you still have these issues. I mean, Nigeria had a border closure not too long ago that we just started to relax. So we have all of those bottlenecks that we need to deal with if we need to be able to, trade properly within the African continent. Do you think that we need more events like this Intra-Africa Trade Fair in Africa to facilitate trade, facilitate networking within the African continent?
Yes, we need to have more events such as this that trickle down from the African level to the country level, regional level to the country level. It's very, very important, because beyond the African trade level at which we are participating now, we just concluded in Algeria, there are need for you to step it down to the regional level. There is need for you to step it down to the country. For instance, if you take it back to the region, you look at what, like ECOWAS, for instance, what are the things that need to do to is taking from the experience of at the African level, taking it to the regional level, areas, what you need to do to make it, to unbutton the locks or trade locks within the region. Then you need to also take it down to the countries. What do we need to do to be able to fit in these other countries? What can we produce to be able to sell in Ghana? What can we produce to sell in America, in South Africa, Ethiopia, or what can Ethiopia produce to sell in Nigeria? So you need to be taken down to the regional level. Then, so there is the need for other programs designed to aid trade, both stakeholders meetings, conferences, workshops, trainings, other engagement, and advocacy groups. For instance, I am championing a project that is called Africa for African Forum. It's called AF. The AF project is to support Africa for Africa. Let Africa look inward. There is network of opportunities within Africa. Whatever I need, I have in Nigeria. We should not go to look for it in China. We can go take it in Nigeria. Whatever we have in South Africa, we should take it from South Africa rather than going to America to have it. So the African for African Forum initiative is one of those initiatives I think that will also encourage, promote more of what AFPF conference is doing. So that we need such organizations, not only at the big body level, but at the smaller body level. We need to have more of the young SMEs championing this. The young Africans, who are the future of Africans, need to be at the forefront of championing all these too, within the small SMEs that we have within Africa. So by so doing proper advocacies and awarenesses, we can be able to achieve a wonderful trade within Africa.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ugochukwu Williams, for your time and for talking to me about the Intra-Africa Trade Fair that happened in Algeria. I hope that you had a great time. Obviously, you did have a good time. So thank you so much for your time.
I did. It was. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And that is how we wrap up the business lens. Before I wrap it up, just to mention that the former president for Nigeria, President Olusegun Obasanjo, is the chairman of the IATF Advisory Council, just so you know. Okay, this is where we wrap up the business lens for today on Rapid TV. We'll do this again, of course, on Monday. On the other side of the hour, as always, we have the news coming up. I'm Faith After Joseph. Enjoy the rest of your day.